Well, we made it to Election Day, and it's exciting, yet it is stressful and anxiety filled as we near the end of what many have called the most important election in our lifetime. People are understandably anxious about what the coming days and weeks might hold. Well, to help us make sense of all of this is once again political science professor from UC Merced, Dr. Nathan Monroe, coming back on Great Day to provide some more perspective on this historic election. Dr. Monroe, thanks a lot for joining us once again. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to the conversation and forward to a great election day.
Absolutely. Well, we want to start with a question about swing states. Back in 2016, former President Trump won Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And then President Biden took those same states in the 2020 election. So what's the significance of these states voting for the other party just 4 years later? And can that tell us anything about this election?
Well, we take that a couple of different ways. I mean, one, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Those are the critical states, and so we get a lot of attention focused by the campaigns. There's a lot more messaging. There's a lot more attempt to sway, those states. There's a lot more efforts to get turnout, and so, to an extent, right? Maybe it tells us something about how effective the campaigns are being in terms of swaying middle voters. Sometimes, it might be how energized the various sort of constituencies are. But I think it tells us, something else that we need to pay attention to, and that is if we look at Arizona and Georgia, those were surprises, at least to a degree, right? We saw some polls, before the 2020 election where they switched, but there could be some surprises here that we don't totally see coming. There's been polls in recent days suggesting that Iowa, which is a sort of a Republican stronghold in general, maybe closer than we think. Saying, North Carolina kind of crept up, for the Democrats last time. On the other side, right, Minnesota is the longest standing, I think, state to have voted Democrat in every election since 1972. Minnesota looks tighter than people expect, and looks like it could, maybe sneak up for a Trump victory. Are those likely? I don't know, but we look back at the previous election, and certainly there are potential surprises out there.
Okay. Well, then, with that said, do you think we'll know who the next president of the United States will be tonight? Or do you think it's more realistic to say we're going to all need to be patient and wait a couple of days?
I think it's tonight. Tomorrow you call me out when we talk.
Okay.
And when we're in the middle of a hand wringing, sort of long count ahead of us. I think it's tonight. And here's my thought about this. If you look at the polls, one of the striking things is that the polls are clustering around a race being tighter with fewer outlier polls than we would expect. And the reason I think this is, it's a leftover 2016 effect, right? Where people, I think, got it wrong, right? And it was by a sort of large margin in some cases, leaning towards Democrats. Well, if we look at the range of polls, there are some polls suggesting that Harris is up by as much as 9%. Now, pollsters get to make a lot of decisions and defend those decisions in terms of what they're actually estimating, and sort of that gives them the different numbers. But I think there's at least a meaningful chance that the results are going to be clear by before midnight, right? We're going to get a call, kind of like the old times. And if it is a call early, I think it's a Harris presidency. Wow. If it ends up dragging on, I think it's more of a coin flip. But I think if we hear tonight, it's going to be a Harris win.
Kind of like as we're waiting for the jury to come back. If it comes back quick, we have an assumption.
That's right. We're all standing out in the lobby,
waiting. Okay, so if we remember our West Wing days, Dixville Notch in New Hampshire was the way the nation was going to go, right? 13 people live in this township in New Hampshire. Only 6 can vote. And how did they vote? 3 Democrat and 3 Republican today. Do you put anything into that?
I sure don't.
Okay.
It's a fun anecdote, but as I like to say, I'm always here as a political scientist, and one of the things that we pay a lot of attention to is large N, and which is what we mean by a lot of people involved to give us some statistical power. And I think those things probably are correlated, and sometimes they're right because they blow with the winds when the winds are pretty strong. But I don't think that that tells us very much. And in fact, I would caution viewers in general, right, to over focus not just on a particular anecdote, but I would caution viewers to over focus on even a single poll, right? Because we have a tendency to choose which poll we want to look at because we want the result to be what we want it to be,
Yeah.
one way or the
Yeah.
other. So I think no, I think we gotta really try to take an analytical approach here, and if nothing else, wait, see how it really goes.
All righty, we will do that. We know that Judd Bartlett is not on the ballot. Hey, we have video right now of one of the presidential candidates, Donald Trump, who is in Florida about to cast his ballot. He's speaking right now. But he would be, in just a few moments when he goes to vote, the first presidential candidate with a felony conviction, because it's legal to have a felony in Florida and vote. Do you think that plays a part at all in this election?
His felony conviction?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't seem to. I
Yeah.
mean, in the sense that, we kind of have gotten to a place, and I don't know if I want to say this is generally true of candidates across the spectrum, but with Donald Trump, we've gotten to a place where, the sort of foibles and maybe what we might certainly some would call much bigger than foibles, don't
Yeah.
seem to attach to him, right? We remember, Bill Clinton was called the Teflon president, because there were
Yeah.
scandals that didn't seem to attach. Well, I don't know what the sort of next level up from Teflon is, but whatever that is, that's Trump.
That is Trump.
And I don't know, I don't know that that really is the critical piece. It's as surprising as it is to say that.
Yeah. There are so many ways now that people can vote. We can do it in person, as many people are doing today, mail in, which is what I did, and I got a text back saying we got it, absentee or provisional ballot. Do you know the order in which these ballots are counted and what the process is like once the polls close?
There's two major sort of styles, right? One is they count all the early voting and all the mail-in ballots beforehand, or at least they can start counting beforehand, and then day of election hits, and then they start counting the in-person. The other, of course, is the opposite. They wait. They count the in-person first, then they count the mail-ins. The key for us here is that there are two in California. We start counting early, as in a lot of states, where all the mail-ins we start counting, all the early voting we start counting before the election day. But in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, among others, but those are the two sort of swing states in the set, they don't start counting until today. And so what that means is that they've got a lot of early votes, a lot of mail-in votes that are still waiting around to be counted. And if those states look close, right, those are, I think, the places that in some ways it's most likely for us to see delays in the call, is if those states are pivotal in terms of the number of electoral votes needed to decide the race. And, they're trying to count a lot of votes and those that are staying close. That could be where the delay is.
Okay. What is the immediate impact, do you think, if a candidate claims victory before, let's say, the Associated Press does?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sets us up, to have what I think people are already worried about, which is, some refusal to accept the results of the election, right? And that's obviously played out in 2020 in a very concerning and violent way. And that could very well, be something that plays out in maybe a less concentrated way. I mean, storming the Capitol is dramatic and hopefully something that we won't see again in our lifetime. But certainly pockets of sort of violence, resistance, threatening behavior probably is instigated by the idea that a candidate is going to make a call when there's a lot of uncertainty, because it's not because it's an early call so much as it's an indication that they're going to sort of decide whether or not they won, regardless of what everyone else is saying. And I think that sort of is a potentially problematic, result from a Democratic standpoint. Small d, not big D.
So 27 states have activated National Guard soldiers to be on standby today. Press Secretary from the Pentagon, Pat Ryder, says it's routine. But do you recall past elections where National Guard was fully out?
Well, it depends on what you mean by fully, but yes,
Okay.
I mean, this is not super uncommon, right? And it's, happened in 2020 and I, to a degree, happened in 2016 where they were activated, right, is the word, right? They're not out patrolling the streets, but they're ready. They're sort of prepared for any kind of, unrest. I think that what's more significant about it is the fact that we're aware of it, right? I mean, in a sense, it's the fact that we're all concerned enough that we all of a sudden say, wait a minute, that could be something that we actually have to confront and use and rely on, or that might intervene in a way that people are uncomfortable with. And so I think that it's not alarming so much that they're on alert as it is alarming that we think that that's a very real possibility, in either during or in the aftermath of the election.
Okay. Well, you likely have an exciting day with your students at UC Merced,
I do.
and thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. And we do look forward to talking with you again tomorrow morning.
All right. Well, hopefully I'll be right, and we'll be talking about the next president and not which places are still counting.
We'd like that. Great day. We'll be right back.